We are live. Okay, wonderful. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the CPC call. And today is the 11th of November, 2025. Um, let's get started. If you haven't added your names to the minutes already, please do so. Trying to paste them in the Zoom chat if they're not already. It looks like they are. Yes, wonderful. Thank you, Ben. Do we have any announcements for today?
I think I can make an announcement, Kate. I've been in meetings. Don't know if you sent an email yet. You
Yeah, I
did?
posted it in the issue.
Oh, awesome. Okay. Well, congratulations. We have our new voting reps for the CPC. Jordan Harband will be the at-large, and our two regular are Chris Dalmeda and Ethan Arrowwood. So whoop, whoop. Congrats.
Very cool.
Yep.
Congrats to all of the nominees.
Yep.
Oh, someone has some fancy Zoom action going on here. All right.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think Ethan is a first timer indeed. Yeah, it's great to have new faces.
yeah, I didn't mean to leave anybody out. Congratulations, Jordan and Chris as well. I think Chris, aren't you a repeat? I just wanted to, say it's nice to see you
Yeah,
always. So
yeah. As I mentioned to Robin, I look forward to another year of absolutely no voting because we resolve everything successfully by consensus.
That's very funny, actually. I love well anyway, I don't want to go on the whole discussion digression about this, but I think that's a great framing, and this is perfect. Thank you, Chris. All right. Any other announcement? No. All right, cool. Let's get into what's next on the agenda. We will have a private session to discuss travel fund request at the end of this call. I think there was one request. Do we have board meeting updates? We did have a meeting, sort of like a work session of the board last week. I'm not sure that there's anything that is ready or that is worth sharing in this setting. Is
No,
there?
but just generally brainstorming different ways to expand our partnership program, essentially, and again, just further fundraising strategies for the foundation. So, got some works in progress, and once we sort of narrow them down, we'll definitely bring them to the CPC for feedback before we move forward with anything.
Very cool. Okay. And then we should move to staff updates. I didn't look at those in advance, but I see nothing waiting on board. There's the loopback IP policy thing that is still in the air. There was there's an open issue to document. Oh, and you've actually this was issue 1677, and Ben, you've tied it to issue 1243 that we should be discussing later on. I'm assuming they're in the hopefully they're in the agenda. At least one of them is.
Yeah, I can add so we do have one tag waiting on staff update. It's not tagged for the agenda, but I assume
No,
we'll talk
sure.
about that
But
because
yeah,
it's
yeah.
tagged. Yeah.
But is the other one in the agenda? I just want to make sure that we don't end up missing both as a
One,
result
two,
of.
four, three. I don't see it. It's an old one that I
No.
tagged.
Oh, so
Would it be helpful just for me to, let me
let's
just get to
just
do
do
it?
it now.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay, so there was an issue. It's 1677. And this was around trying to clarify how the elections are run, because it's the information is scattered in different documents and it's a little confusing. And so I started going down this path and I got to the point of creating a PR, and I realized I was actually introducing some things that are pretty big changes. So I wanted to kind of discuss them before I actually file the PR. So I think there's two primary suggestions I think that I would make. The first is around how we handle impact voting. How we handle impact voting representatives. And the other, which was discussed, I think, over a year ago, is around combining non-impact and regular voting members. Like we have all these tiers and it's very confusing. So anyway, let's talk about each of these separately. So the first suggestion that I had, again, I haven't talked to any of you about this, so take that with a grain of salt, is that I was proposing that impact voting representatives be appointed rather than elected. This is analogous to how platinum board members operate. I talked about
It's how it works today, though.
practically,
They're
yes.
nominated and ratified, essentially.
Well, okay, the difference is that we say they need to do it every year.
Mm.
And so the difference here is that once an impact voting member is appointed, they serve until they decide to not serve anymore. They retire. The project elects someone else, which they can do at any time, or they're removed for some reason, which hopefully never happens, right? And then I also detailed out how ratification works because that's very ambiguous in our documentation. But the more important thing is, what do folks think about the change to how impact voting members are appointed and selected and the cadence that happens?
It may just be a nice reminder for the project to say, hey, does anyone else want to turn, by making it yearly?
So it is yearly now.
Right.
What practically happens now, and this might be a separate problem that's not solved by what I'm proposing, is these very rarely change. The times when they do change is usually when someone leaves a project and we need to have someone appointed new. But it's very rare that the impact representatives are adjusted. And many of the impact projects also don't really have a lot of folks who would be cycling in, right? There's a couple single maintainer ones or ones that have one or two. So we can keep it yearly, but practically speaking, it doesn't change yearly. And when I was writing this, I fully acknowledged that like it is nice to have a point of time in the year where we reconnect with folks and try to reconnect with the projects, but this might not be the right one to do that. Like I would, if that's really important, I would probably suggest we schedule projects for like a once yearly presentation to the CPC on status or something like that, but not try to use the election as a way of trying to re-engage with folks.
Wes has hand.
Oh, you can go first if you want. Okay, I beat you by just a bare bit. I have been thinking about it. We've kind of circled on this like a few times in the past of like, how do we connect with people? And I feel like, well, clearly the election doesn't seem to do it, right? So that's like, not it. But I feel like we need to do something because even like some Slack conversations recently, I think we found there's been, for lack of a better word, missed connections between different projects that are doing some similar stuff. And it would be really nice to get more, involvement, at least knowing some of the other folks across the project. Have we done any, yeah, maybe that, I don't know. Have we done what other reach out have we done to see what the folks who don't show up to this kind of stuff would like to see? Because maybe that would then answer whether or not we need, something in this particular change, right? Like I know your goal here is a little bit more engagement, but like maybe they just other folks don't really care about this. Maybe they don't know, I don't know. Like this is where I'm kind of getting is like.
That's insightful. We do often talk to the maintainers, but it's pushing out information. The one time we did it, we're very thoughtful about pulling information was when Jory and I did a standards roadshow with the projects. But I do love the idea of pulling information on CPC or kind of sharing.
Yeah, it would just be, I would really like to know, like, what are we missing that is why folks are not more active in maybe this group or one of the other, foundation ones? Because like even reaching out, on specific issues, like people are engaged. They kind of want, more, like these maintainers are not, sitting around barely keeping their project alive. Like these are some of the people who are most engaged in their projects. And yet I think we still miss out on their engagement here. And maybe it doesn't need to be here every week, but like even once a year, it would be nice to have like a introduce yourself and what you work on. I don't know. Like I know, I show up for stuff, but like would that even be, something people would care about? I don't know. Like we need, but it definitely feels like we need some thought to that engagement story so that we can figure out like what is the best way to get these impact projects members more, of what they need.
Chris?
Yeah, no, totally agree with Wes's comments. And I don't know, to Ben's original comment about, I doesn't think that the voting season is the time to try and get projects to re-engage. I don't know. I don't know that I have a great idea to improve that outcome, but I might feel like I've mentioned this before. It doesn't sit right with me that the voting members, um, so many of them are absent. About half of our voting members are never here. And to have what is effectively the governing body of the CPC be absentee, um, half of them pretty much always a little bit more than that. There's a few more that are rarely here. Um, so, I don't know what the solution is there. I don't think that they can effectively represent the interests of the foundation's members if they aren't regularly attending these meetings. Um, that being said, I'm glad that we have very little / nothing that ever is called for a vote, and we operate by consensus, and that includes all of the members of the cross project council, which I think is the healthy way to do things. So I don't know. We're not going to solve that today or probably this year, but I mean, I do think we maybe should put some conditions around whether you're an active member. People that are not active regular members don't stay regular members. We try and purge the list of inactive folks. And it's not a punishment. It's just trying to keep things, accurate and organized. So I would like to see maybe something that, if for folks that are not engaged, that's fine. You don't have to be engaged for, to the same degree that other folks are. But then you probably shouldn't have voting rights because when it comes to now we're going to vote on something and you've been completely out of the loop, you don't have the context. That doesn't seem like good governance to me.
Yeah, I think it's a fair point, too. I think both of those points were like really thoughtful about this thing that we've been sort of like running around for a while. My inclination here is sort of like this initially the same as sort of a number of folks express, which is, oh, we want these contact points. But I also feel like hearing Wes and Chris and others that maybe we should like not try to rely on things that are not designed to create that connection, to maintain that connection, and try to actually address the problem in a more efficient way. And sort of like rip the band-aid off. Um, so I don't know. What do people feel?
I was following you until you said rip the Band-Aid off. What do you mean by that?
Because maybe I screwed up like the an English expression because it happens to me on a regular basis. I meant I meant to say, yeah, I like the Europeans on the call being like laughing about me, or like the sorry, the non-native English speakers. Oh my God, I am
Yeah,
digging my own
yeah.
hole. I hope I used that one correctly. Anyway, no, what I wanted to say was I think we should just go ahead with what Ben is suggesting we do, which is like fix a problem that would make things easier from an operational perspective, and not try to rely on this particular sort of like connection point to to a degree, as kind of what I'm hearing is kind of like as an excuse not to actually tackle the problem really, and I hope that like this is this is it helps regardless, which I think we all agree doesn't.
Yeah, I'm in agreement.
I do hear the argument of like trying to bring new people, um, and creating occasions for that. Um, but I also don't. I mean, like it hasn't been the case that this has been used, that has been successfully used to bring new people. Right?
Yeah, I thought I'm having is I think, we try to get like leadership involved in the voting representation. And I wonder if we should maybe flip that and just try to engage the projects and ask them to identify someone, even a less less leadership role that can commit to not every CPC meeting, but fairly regular. And then, we could use that as an opportunity to kind of, get them involved in our work and just have them involved and help them, thinking if they're, I hate the term junior dev, but, we could help them grow too. It could be a mutually beneficial situation. And then when they do have to vote, they have the context, but they can go back to their project leadership to really get more guidance on how, as a project they should vote, that kind of stuff. Ben?
Sorry, I was adding Ethan to the present list. Hey, Ethan. Yeah, I think
Congrats, Ethan.
Yeah, congrats, Ethan.
Thank you all. I heard there was cake. I assume I'll get mine in the mail.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly, that's how it
right.
works.
Thank you all.
I agree with what everyone is saying. I think when Toby mentioned like ripping the Band-Aid off, the first thing that popped in my head is like if I was starting from scratch here and didn't have any of this sort of existing work here, like would I just have voting members? And people from the projects can decide if they want to be a voting member. People who are regular members can become voting members. We just have like one tier. Um, and the most important thing there is really like attendance and participation. And when we do this, we do ask this question when we're looking for folks for the board, is the last question is always like, will you be able to make the board meetings? Because if you can't make the board meetings, you're not going to be a very good board member. And so we could kind of integrate that a little bit into the requirements. There is a downside there, which is like I think having the impact projects have voting representation. The intent behind that I think is important. So there's a trade-off there. But I just wanted to share that one thought that came to my head when Toby mentioned that.
Yeah, we have had
Yeah.
we've
Oh,
had the
please.
discussion over the last several years. I'm really a strong advocate on allowing more voting members from the projects. I do know that we tier our programs just from a resource perspective between impact and the others. But from folks who are really, I think you maybe interested in governance, maybe not every, project developer is actually interested in the governance aspect. So anyhow, it might align more in a better
Yeah.
way.
And so maybe in terms of doing incremental change, like what I would propose here is that we change the impact to be by appointment. So there isn't an election for that. And I want to hear folks' comments. We combine the non-impact and regular voting tiers to just be like non-impact voting members or something like that.
I think Toby had that on that simplifying issue about just calling them all voting members, which I really like because we've always been confused and we've had the discussion. There really is no difference. And I really still would like to expand the number as well.
I'm kind of with Robin on the latter, especially with the collab spaces being like, there's a lot of collab spaces that are doing really good work. And the whole collab space was kind of originally designed as sort of a different way to have projects. And so I'm not suggesting every collab space is a, impact collab space, to stretch the metaphor. But I think it would be good to also have like some representation from that realm. I'm not sure how to do that in a way that doesn't add a whole bunch of additional complexity that seeing Ben just go like, oh my God, shut up.
We'll have 5 different READMEs spread across 5 different repos that explain how to do the election for the working groups.
And then we need a get out the vote campaign because sometimes we do have to chase you all to vote.
Well, I think we can handle that separately, and I do think the working groups are doing really, really good work, and I don't, there are some folks on this call who participate in those working groups, which is great, but not everyone does. So like in this spirit of communication, like having those working groups share more of their work with the CPC or coming into a CPC call to say, hey, like here's some of the cool stuff we're working on is a grand idea.
So could we maybe suggest expanding, like, I would definitely go behind something that expanded the voting members. Like essentially combine the 2 different categories of whatever those were, and that we always struggle to figure out what they are. And then like include collapse spaces in there. Even if it doesn't change anything and people can just show up anyway, just like materially state it is, I think would be good.
Yeah, I'll
And
think
then
about that.
maybe expand that number. Because I don't know, right now there's like 4 seats and maybe move it to 6 or something like this, or like 5 or something that's reasonable.
For the past 2 years, you've been using that form to collect responses, and I think it's for regular maybe. There's always been more folks who are interested than we have seats. So we could look at the past 2 years and just see how many folks are interested and use that as a guideline for how many seats there should be.
Yeah, it seems like even this last election, we would have 4 voting members if we didn't have the distinction between the 2 categories, and now we have 3 voting members from that recent election as opposed to 4.
Yeah, I think that would be good. I do want to say that some of the impact projects get a little bit angsty when they feel like the balance of votes would suddenly be like broadly in favor of smaller projects, which I understand and believe we need to be respectful of, because these were part of like there were historical reasons in the merger for this to be organized that way. And so I think finding ground where those numbers are not sort of like tipping the equilibrium too brutally, would make it easier to get this through. Ethan.
The only the thing that comes to mind for me for this is, even though we have not historically seen a lot of like turnover with these voting members and projects, is there any concern from the standpoint of like, if we give people sort of like indefinite terms or something, is there a good process for like new people to get involved and take over or take someone's place or join? And like, I know we all can hope that we'll all act, great every time, but like, I just don't want this to accidentally sort of allow someone to snag that, hold on to that seat indefinitely and then never give it up.
So I
So,
think
Ben, you might. Oh, sorry, you were going to answer this.
I think the idea with impact projects, the idea with impact projects has always been that those projects have some process that decides who their voting representative is. They basically just tell the CPC who that is. So if any of those impact projects, want to have a term limit or do elections or do any of those things, are more than welcome to do that. For this like new combined tier of non-impact and regular, that's still going to be a yearly election. So those won't be appointed. Yeah. So good clarification.
Yeah, and if none of this is like CBC charter based, it's just like CBC policies. And so if we end up like, well,
I think there
some
are
of it
charter
is.
changes here. Yeah,
Oh, well, have fun with this.
there will be. I've already got this all done. I just need to do the PR.
Oh, so there are some charter changes? That's interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, then never mind what I was going to say. Well, I'm looking forward to looking at that PR, that's for sure.
Yeah.
I was thinking about the thing I was saying before too about getting new folks in. I mean, maybe part of the guidance for impact projects could be a suggestion that they have, someone who's more experienced and someone who's less experienced, and even consider it some level of mentoring there as well.
Wes?
Yeah, we discussed this a little bit for Express, I think. Intentionally rotating people. I think there's value there, but you have to have enough people signed on for that to make that happen. And for us, we didn't at the time. I mean, I think, and the folks who would have signed on for that are already, actively engaged. So it's not super different from just being somebody who shows up. And I'm not sure there's many projects that are in a state to do that effectively. So I think we would have to probably, sort out some other things in order to get most of the, impact projects into a state where we're incentivizing that or like able to push it. Because again, I just don't think, like, I think Node.js is, we weren't. Who else is? Like, right? Like, that's like, who's gonna, what other projects have enough people on their bench, to have a rotating, cast? Just like, I just don't think there's enough projects in that state.
Yeah, I do want to add something that both of like the last comments made me think about, and we chatted about in the working session last week. Is we should do more sort of like culture transmission with projects and sort of be more intentional about this and rely less on sort of like touch points or like governance rules or things like this for that to happen. And so I really like this idea of like for example, when a new project comes in, like a new project when they're onboarded, like they should come for a whole CPC session, and we should like go through their charter together and explain why why we have a charter and what it's used, stuff like that, and sort of like figure out during that session, all right, like who's gonna come in the next CPC call, things like this. So I think that would be probably a lot more effective than trying to add rules and stuff.
Okay.
Is there anything else on? Oh, sorry. Please.
I was gonna say, I think that the steps for me are very clear. I added notes to the issue. And yeah, expect a PR in the not too distant future.
Very cool. All right. It's like nearly the, and we haven't gotten to the main part of the agenda yet. But I think this was a good conversation. Waiting on websites updates. I think there was just one thing, and I think you did it, and that was adding feature complete and archival things to the website. Am I right, Ben?
Yeah, I was just waiting for user acceptance. So yes, it's live. I mentioned in the issue like, hey, take a look. If it looks good to you, we can just close it out.
Yeah, very cool. I think it would be. I was just wondering, like, if we could get icons, or if we should just like use emojis for these different stages.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's like a little Friday project to work on the icons.
Sure.
Yeah.
I mean, uh, but I
I'm
think
sure
like those things
Claude
matter.
Claude can help. Yes.
Very cool. Okay, well, if Claude can help, then that's perfect.
Yes.
All right. So let's get into the main part of the agenda. So, 1694, move onboarding issues and board to separate repo.
That was my request.
I
Yeah.
feel like there's some back and forth going there. Like,
Yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah,
folks might recall. Sorry, go ahead. Sorry, go ahead, Rafa.
yeah. You know, when the merger happened and we had all of the onboarding or when new projects, we had the template Jory created with like a checklist and things got lost and sometimes things lived with the CPC and sometimes with the project. So then it turned into kind of a PM management tool for every task in the CPC. And for me, it's sort of like on a search engine. If it's not on the first page, it doesn't exist. And so I think things were getting lost on CPC issues that needed CPC input. And so my thoughts were if an issue doesn't need CPC comments or issues, then we need to move that tracking to another location.
yeah. So I have a little bit of a different understanding of the history of this, and I entirely agree with you that the current state of things is terrible and is making the CPC repository very hard to scan, unless you're very organized. So I agree was like the problem. The first day I saw the whole like sort of wall of like onboarding issues, I kind of like I think I pinged Joe and said like, "Are you chill with this?" And Joe was like, "Yeah, I'm chill with this."
Oh
And
yeah,
Joe's
I'm
kind
not
of
chill
like
with
chill
I'm
as
not
shit.
chill with that.
Uh,
Well,
uh,
and
and I was just like, oh,
instead of focusing on the past,
yes,
let's just focus on what we should do to make
no.
sure.
So I agree. No, but the reason that we had so many issues in the repository that were checklists and that were not tackled was because those were onboarding issues for projects that were already part of the foundation that were trying to retrofit and that we didn't have project PM support to actually do. And understandably, they were also kind of like, why are you asking us to do this? We've been here before you, right? Which is, a fairly reasonable position to hold. So those checklists weren't filled in not because the system wasn't working, but because the sort of like social context around them was like not ideal.
Good word.
Yeah. Yeah. And so when I did the onboarding was AMP, what I did is exactly the process that Ben and Kate have been doing in the main repository, which is create a one issue per line item. But I had that on the AMP side in a governance repository there, and so that's where the conversations were happening, and then we're kind of like reporting on the output of those conversations in the checklist. The reason we wanted to move these things back from the onboarding repository or the status update, whatever that thing was called, to the CPC is that we were no longer tracking them and they were like happening somewhere in the back and no one really knew what was going on. So I kind of like the idea of like there's one checklist and there's only one item and that one's in the CPC and then we can just track this there and the CPC knows what's going on, right? But now there's a whole bunch of automation for like creating issues from like a checklist, and that no longer works if you do it in separate repositories, etc. So I feel like there's some like implementation issues here, but like there was one issue and we know where it is was kind of nice, and I still think we should do something like this.
So, and I want to let Kate speak to this also because she's been working a lot with the projects on onboarding. I do think having separate issues is the right way to go. It makes it much easier to work with the projects, which is really what this is for. In terms of having the conversation in one particular issue, it's focused. We have a project board that's what all this stuff powers. It makes it really easy to see the status, which we've never had before. So I think if it's overwhelming to have all these issues in the GitHub repo, I think the solution to that is moving it to a different repository. We can still have an overall issue in the CPC repo that points to the other place, so the CPC has eyes on it. But I don't want to lose having atomic tasks that are easy to collaborate with the other projects on.
Chris.
Yeah, I don't have strong feelings either way. I just pointing out, and I know this was already pointed out, and Toby had a comment on the issue that like we just moved everything over, which is like if that's not the way we want to do it, that's fine. But like, can we just be really sure this time, whatever we do, that's like we're gonna at least commit to that for a little bit, besides like be here in like 2 months later and say we want to move everything back.
Robin?
Yeah, I do have strong feelings. So, and I think going back to the earlier part of this meeting is driving more participation and engagement in the CPC and a better understanding of what interesting things we work on. If you do kind of show up and have to scroll and scroll and scroll, it's just harder to have context and perspective and, quick glance.
Hey.
I have a strong preference for keeping the project board, and if that means moving to a separate repo, I don't have an issue with that. The only concern I would have is I think this can be done, but you would all know better than me. Are we able to connect the sub issues in a different repo to kind of check off in one single repo, like one single issue in the CPC? That way we'll have somewhere we can track it without PMO needing to kind of manually go back and forth.
I think I understand what you're asking. Let's talk about that offline. I think we can accomplish this without having to do anything manual.
Okay. And that works for me.
So I think sorry, Chris, please.
Oh, no, I was just going to say I'm 100% going to back, whoever's going to be working on this stuff mostly, whatever makes your life easier, whatever the path of least resistance is, that's way more important to me than, any other factors here. I do, just as a reminder, one of the motivations for moving everything back to the CPC repo was that it was perceived that having it in this separate repo that nobody really looks at or follows was one of the things contributing to the stagnation and non-movement of that stuff. But it sounds like that's sort of would not be an issue here anymore.
Yeah, I think a couple other things to keep in mind is that there are a lot of tasks to do for onboarding a project. So this is actually reflecting fact, which I think is important. The other thing is in an ideal world where we didn't have this big backlog, that long list of issues only exists when we're onboarding a project. And that really should be a month or two. So for example, like GeoDA, right, which was one of the projects we've onboarded recently. Yes, there was a long list of issues. We worked on them relatively quickly and, that list went away. So this problem will arise when we onboard a project because we file like the 20 issues that we need. But yeah, it's not a permanent
And we
thing.
just had lit and perspective and geoda, so
Yeah, it will
Right.
happen, I guess is the point. Yeah.
I mean, I think regardless, I think there's something that everyone's clear was here is if this needs 20 issues per onboarding, it can't happen in the CPC because it doesn't work for anyone. I think that's quite clear. So I think if like taking this back to the repository in which it was before or creating a new one, I frankly, if we could reuse whatever we had before, if there's a history there to like be maintained or something, maybe that makes sense. If not, like whatever, right?
Yeah, we'll poke around.
I think that makes sense. And then I think that what's important is that the CPC doesn't lose track of stuff. And if that is, you just have a report on this topic, at every CPC call and just give us an update on what's going on. That could also work.
Yeah, I mean, we do have the board, which allows you to see, it's really nice because it allows you to see the progress of these tasks for each project individually. And so linking to that from our CPC agenda is a good idea.
Right, but then we need someone to run with it because if not, it's going to take us like a year and a half to actually pay attention to it during calls.
Oh, I just mean as a reminder for folks. So I'm a big fan of self-serve. Like if you're interested in the status of onboarding and you don't have actual work that needs to be done, that you can just go to a board and see where things are.
No, sure, I think that's great. My ask is, I think my ask is simple: is if you want to completely remove all of this from the CPC, I want like some form of status update from like staff on this on a semi-regular basis. Like in the in the announcement section or I don't something, because if not, we just risk falling back into the thing where we don't hear about this for I don't know how long, and then like weird things happen and it's sad.
Yeah, I'm less concerned about that because it's a much smoother process to get things graduated, and we do celebrate graduation very publicly. If things are blocked, we obviously like that's top of mind for me and Kate, so we do include people. But yeah, I think we can do a regular
I hear
update.
you, but we have like 4 charters that are not approved, and that is part of the problem. Like that's part of like this visibility problem. It's not the only thing, but it's we need to like this is an area where we need to really improve how we work.
Yeah.
And so yeah. All right. We don't have a lot of time left, and we do have a private session that we need to do. Is there anything that we would absolutely need to look at? I think we're going to spend 3 minutes to decide what we work on in the next working session, because we know. Oh, we know what we're working on. No, we don't know what we're working on in the next working session. We know what we're working on in the one after that. Is there anything specific that we should do in the next working session that would be important to do? Outside of like, it seems like the charter work remains like the biggest issue.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say, but I
Me
kind
too.
of don't want you to work on it just because I won't be here. And I wasn't around for the last one as well. But certainly it shouldn't stop just because some folks won't be there. Because we have TC39 in Tokyo next week.
All right, so let's do charter work in the next working session. More of, and hopefully it won't be just finalizing stuff by then. Oh, we could do that next week too if you want, Ben. I mean, that's actually more fun than charters.
Yeah, I
And
mean,
so we
there's a
can
little
keep charters
recency
around for
bias.
when Chris is back. Yeah, I
Yeah,
like that.
we were just talking about it, but it seemed like something that there was some energy around, and
Sure.
yeah.
Can I ask you to file an issue on this and tag it was like working session? This is more fun. Thank you. All right. Should we wrap this up and move into the private session? Okay. Seeing lots of nodding and hearing no opposition to do so. Let's close this public session. Thank you all very much for joining this call and looking at the stream. And we'll see you in the working session in a week or in 2 weeks in the next CPC call. Perfect.
Joe, do you want to stop